Chances are, if you like roller coasters, you've done one of these. The B&M Wing Coaster is a very popular model with many built across the world, and there are 4 in the United States, so being the enthusiast I am, let's compare them. Stats are the base of these coasters, so let's start off with them. But before that, let's go over the point system. For first place in a category, a coaster will receive 3 points, second place will get 2, and so on and so forth until fourth place gets 0. Let's start with the weird category, height. By technicality, Wild Eagle is 200 feet from the base of the lift to the top, but it doesn't drop nearly as far. Gatekeeper gets second place with a 170 foot tall height, and Thunderbird takes the bronze for the 145 foot Entleman, since it doesn't have a first drop with the launch. X-Flight is the smallest of the wings, but is still a respectable 112 feet tall. First drop will be factoring in the height of the drop and the forces themselves, so let's start off with Wild Eagle. Eagle may have a 210 foot height, but the terrain makes the drop significantly shorter at 135. However, I really enjoy this drop in the back row and it provides plentiful butterflies. For this category, Wild Eagle gets third place, just short of Gatekeeper and Thunderbird. Speaking of Gatekeeper, this ride has a massive wing over drop that gives great hang time and solid positives on the pullout. Just for its massive size, I'll put this drop in first. Thunderbird doesn't have a true first drop, but I'll consider it the Entleman for the sake of it. The whip on the exit is amazing, and so are the positives. This is a shockingly amazing element that puts the coaster in the number 2 slot for the drop category. Last and certainly least, sorry Great America, is X-Flight, with a downsized version of Gatekeeper's drop. For some reason, the first gen vest restraints don't let you enjoy the drop. It also has less hang time and a more gradual pullout, putting it in 4th place for this category. If we went and compared every single inversion, we'd be here for a long time, so let's just shorten it into one category. Wild Eagle has the least inversions out of the wings, with only 4. The first loop is pretty good, but the next 3 are much more floaty, which is a common theme you'll see for these coasters. Overall, these inversions aren't the best, and there's not many, so this coaster gets last place. Gatekeeper has the most inversions out of these coasters with 6, and all of them are very floaty, although a few can deliver some positives, such as the dive loop. This coaster feels very similar to Wild Eagle with the inversions, but gives it a bit more force, putting it in second place. Thunderbird is a coaster that pulls a lot of force on its inversions, making it stand out from the rest. The only one that doesn't provide any force is the last Heartline roll, but it gives crazy hang time and it was meant for that. Other than that, this coaster is a powerhouse and gets first. X-Flight may be small, but it packs a punch with the inversions. The second half especially has some lower to the ground inversions that make for great forces, but it isn't a Thunderbird, making it 3rd place. Theming may not make or break a ride, but it does appeal to the general theme park goers, so let's look at that. Wild Eagle doesn't really try for theming, with maybe 3 or 4 Eagle posters on the walls of the queue and no near misses during the ride. The coaster had a lot of potential for theming, but Dollywood went the cheaper side and therefore will get 4th place for it. Gatekeeper isn't really themed much, as the focus is more on the dominating appearance in the front of the park, although the keyholes are a nice touch and serve as a fun near-miss moment. I'll give it 3rd place for participation. Thunderbird is really well done by Holiday World, and while it's not on par with something like Velocicoaster, it feels more like the new Cedar Fair coasters like Copperhead Strike, with good theming scattered throughout. It also has a few near-miss elements on the ride like the barn, taking this coaster into 1st place. X-Flight is decently themed for a Six Flags coaster, with good near-miss elements, but the station doesn't have much to it, basically being a dome, putting it in 2nd place. Airtime is an odd sensation for a wing coaster, but let's look at it anyways. Wild Eagle has quite a few good moments of airtime, particularly the first drop and last few hills, but the strength of the airtime is dependent on road and conditions. Overall, this coaster has the most airtime out of the wings, giving Wild Eagle 3 points in 1st place. Gatekeeper also has some moments of floater airtime, although it's not on the level of Eagle, so it does put it in 2nd place. Thunderbird's strong suit is not airtime, but it does have a solid hill towards the end of the ride to put it in 3rd place. X-Flight doesn't have any straightforward airtime, but I found the entry and exit on the 0G rolls to give some small floater, but this coaster gets last for airtime. Intensity is something that can be rare to come by for this model, but some of these coasters can pack a punch. Wild Eagle is a coaster that may be short, but it has a few punchy elements, most notably the pullout of the first drop and loop, which are common grey-out moments. Otherwise, the second half is pretty tame, giving this coaster a third place finish. Gatekeeper is a very graceful ride that doesn't pull much G's, and none of the inversions are super forceful, putting this coaster last, although some of the elements can pack a punch depending on what row you're in. Thunderbird is an intensity machine, packing in element after element with some type of force on each. Combine it with the forceful launch and this ride easily soars to number 1. X-Flight is a mixed bag of forces, as some elements can be lame while others can give a lot of whip. Overall, it gets second place for the forces throughout. Now, let's look at what these coasters have to offer lengthwise. Wild Eagle is towards the middle of the pack in prime ride time with a total time of 43 seconds, but the last 15 or so is wasted on some slow hills and turns. With everything combined, this coaster gets third. Gatekeeper is by far the longest of the wings, having at least 15 seconds on the second place coaster, and with a time of 65 seconds. Thunderbird seems like it would be the shortest out of the 4 coasters, but it surprisingly has a time of 49 seconds, with the last Heartline roll dragging it out enough to earn second place. Last and definitely least is X-Flight, with a mere 41 seconds. It's not horrible by any means, considering they didn't have much speed left, but for this model, length can be key if it's done right. I have to give an extra point for Thunderbird going above and beyond by having that very punchy launch, which really adds that extra thrill factor to the ride, instead of a slow lift. In the end, Thunderbird wins with a score of 16 and is trailed barely by Gatekeeper with 13 points. Wild Eagle takes the bronze with 9 points, and X-Flight comes in last with 5. Make sure to drop your thoughts on the best of these in the comments, and if you want to watch another video like this comparing the B&M dives in America, click here.